Good evening and welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking the time out of your night to join us for tonight's public hearing. This is a public hearing for an EGLE application for construction of a 19-slip seasonal marina in Torch Lake in Antrim County. My name is Ryan Blazek. I'm with EGLE's Environmental Support Division. I'm just going to be helping to moderate public hearing tonight. Before we get started, though, I just have some logistical things to get through. First off is the agenda. I'm going to be going through the introduction. That's what's happening right now. A big thing to keep in mind is there's going to be two parts to this public hearing tonight. We're going to start off with an informational session where the applicant or the applicant's representatives will have an opportunity to present on the project, present some information. We're going to follow that up with a question and answer session, so you'll be able to ask some questions related to this project and application. We're going to go through ways to submit an official comment. And then we're going to start off the official hearing. That's where anybody who would like to make a comment can make an official comment for the record on this application. And then we will talk about who to contact with further questions. And we'll explain a little bit later on how we're going to do all this as we go. All right, at this time, I would like to invite our other EGLE staff on the line to turn their cameras on and introduce themselves.
Yeah, hi, welcome everybody. I'm Joe Haas. I'm the district supervisor of the Water Resources Division for the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, EGLE, covering the 22 counties in the Gaylord and Cadillac field offices. I'm responsible for regulations covering Great Lakes, wetlands, and inland lakes and streams, among some others. Take it away, Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie Kent. I'm the environmental quality analyst responsible for Antrim County. I am responsible for Great Lakes, inland lakes and streams, and wetlands, as well as some of our other programs. I had this file before going on parental leave, which is why I'm back today. And Bill Oming, who took this file over for me, unfortunately came down with COVID and is unable to be with us today. So he will not be here.
All right, perfect. Thank you both. All right, one thing to keep in mind are some of these logistical items. All lines will be muted during the hearing, except when you want to ask a question, when we have the question and answer session, or to make your statement. We'll talk about how to do that a little bit later on, but you can submit a question at any time using the Q&A box in your Zoom toolbar. Again, we'll try to answer those questions during that Q&A session. And then we are also recording this hearing, so it'll be posted on our YouTube channel in a couple days. It'll give all of you a chance to watch it again if you'd like, and Bill will be able to watch it as well. So he'll have that opportunity. The next part, we're going to move right into the informational session. So what we're going to do is we're going to unmute Stephen Took and Douglas Colwell, both with Cedar Shores Resort Condominium Association, and they are going to present some information on the project. Looks like we have you, Stephen, and Douglas. Looks like you are both there, unmuted on our end. Stephen, looks like you're unmuted. Douglas, looks like you just have to unmute yourself, and then you can talk. And then I have your slides right here. So what we'll do is, you just let me know when you want to go on to the next slide, basically. I have these two slides, but feel free to take it away. You have about 10-15 minutes before we move on to the question and answer session.
Yeah, I think as it relates to the project, Douglas is going to describe the project first, just to make sure everybody's on the same page with what it is that we're asking for in the permit. You know, to level set, we have 4 boat slips, large boat slips today. We're asking for 5 more. In the small craft, we have 5 small craft slips. We're asking for 5 more. So if you get the 19 is actually not all new. The 19 is partly just to codify what we have today, and then also to move forward with where we want to go forthcoming. We have 263 front feet on Torch Lake. So it's not a small piece of property that we're talking about. We've responded to a lot of inquiries, including, I believe, some of the public comments dating back now to September and early October. And we look forward to a positive outcome to this hearing. Douglas, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Everyone, thank you for joining us. And Carrie and Joe, thank you. And Ryan, thank you for moderating this. To give you a little better geographic perspective, our Cedar Shores location puts us south of Clam Lake Bridge, about 1.4 miles, and roughly 2.5 miles north of Alden. And we're located in a great area of Lake Erie, of Cedar Shores. And our project, if you move to the next slide, please. Our project, as Steve mentioned, involves expanding what we presently have. So basically, our area of the lake, we can say, runs to the north-northwest, running north and south. And we are looking at our existing 4 large boat slips, and we have 5 small boat, or you say personal watercraft. The Coast Guard defines a jet ski personal watercraft as a boat because of propulsion, so we may refer to those as small. So we're asking to expand from 4 existing, adding 5 new large boat slips and adding 5 new small, giving us a total of 19. So when you look at this, our location would be set up where the dock is basically running to the north-northwest, as you can see on the illustration. And our main runway will be approximately 117 feet long. And as we extend out from shore, there'll be approximately 60 feet from shore to the front part of our north-south runway. And our first dock area will be a 20-footer. And then from there on in, we will have 30-foot docks, as is required for a safe turnaround area for boats adjacent to your neighbor's property. We are required to be the distance of 1.5 times where the dock area is. So we would place ourselves 45 feet from our neighbor's line. And on the north end, we would be more than that with our boat dock. So we're looking at expanding this. And you can see from the diagram that we would have docks every other slip. So the middle of 2 boat hoist areas, 2 slips, there would be no dock. So this gives you an idea, an overall, and perhaps this may help you better understand what we wish to do. As Steve said, our lake frontage is 263 feet. And on the right, if using a clock as a location device here, basically at 5 o'clock on the clock, you can see where the deck is located. That's a wooden sun deck that we'd installed years ago. And our walkway from land out to our main runway takes off from there. And you can see that walkway out, we would have the small boat, the personal watercraft, and possibly a small sailboat located in those areas, the hoists. And then running to the north-northwest, you would see our diagram where our boat hoists will be located. Basically, there's 13 feet in between each boat hoist, allowing for the largest boat I believe we have is a 26-footer at this time. And that pretty much wraps up our description of what we have and our plans, what we'd like to do this. Our reason for doing this is so individuals, residents each can have enjoy use of the water with a boat space of their own if they so wish, making this an option and allowing us to all enjoy as we do. So if you'd move to the next slide, please.
Yeah, I think that's all the slides that I have.
Okay.
But if you have
All right.
if you have more to say, you're certainly more than welcome. We still have some time.
Steve, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the public comments, there was And that's the public comments in September and October. There was concern about whether this would be sort of a commercial usage. And in our reply back, we stressed the fact that it would be for the residential co-owners only, and not for any other type of rental activity or other activity that would not be related to the co-owners directly. So I wanted to make sure that was put out there and noted, and you can refer back to the written comments and replies to that point. As it relates to the, the statutory requirements, we've addressed the turnaround radius. That is part and parcel of one of the statutory requirements. In other words, we don't intrude on the riparian rights of any of the owners that are immediately north or immediately south of our property lines. It doesn't interfere with the navigation as in terms of the public areas of the lake. And the marina is, operated so that the adjacent owners do not have any intrusion on their activities. So we want to make sure that, we've addressed many of the statutory requirements and other requirements that may exist under rule in making this application.
One thing that I brushed over rather quickly, and Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the interpretation of the turnaround area is that we are required, we have a responsibility to provide a safe space between our closest dock and where our boat will be and our neighbors. So that area that is required to do a 360, a safe turnaround, is 1.5 times the size of that boat that will be closest to the neighbors. So that's why we are positioning a 45-foot turnaround in that area. So I wanted to explain that. I skipped over that quickly. Is that the correct interpretation, Joe?
Yeah, that's generally accurate. The Part 301 statute requires that boat mooring, ingress and egress for an outside slip has to maintain a minimum maneuvering distance of 1.5 times the length of the slip. And that's measured from the end of the slip, or for broadside moorage, the outside beam of the watercraft moored at that slip. So the measured by the width. This is kind of a, this slip at the bottom, I think it's marked slip number 1. Correct me if I'm wrong. So
Correct.
that appears to be more of a length issue than a broadside issue to me. I mean, you would generally be able to pull straight into that and wouldn't be crossing, unless there was extreme north winds or something, you wouldn't be crossing in from the direct south. So that would be expected to meet that minimum requirements. Mm-hmm. And the concept there is that you're not generally allowed to be expected to traverse across your neighbor's riparian interest area in order to moor your boat. You should be planning to not do that. And this seems to meet that on its face.
Correct. Thank you.
The other question while I'm talking, this is not really a time for EGLE to be asking questions. We'll have plenty of time to do that as needed. But we didn't really talk about what appears to be like a hammer-like dock structure or a pier at the north. I don't know, Ryan, if you've got an arrow you can point to that structure that I'm talking about, if it's clear to you. So go north there. So yeah, that platform, yeah, that structure there. Can we talk about that a little bit? Can you describe that to us?
That will be a loading area for our owners when they're out on their boats and they're pulling up, make a quick pit stop or get food or refresh. Simple area for that.
Yeah, currently that's used as primarily used as a swim dock area.
Okay. So like stop and pick up picnic supplies and then
yeah,
not mooring overnight.
Correct. No mooring overnight. Absolutely not. And as Steve pointed out, this boating area, one of our requirements is that we're not allowing The only people that are allowed in our area with their boats, simply put, are co-owners, nobody else.
All right. Anything else before we move to the question and answer session?
Steve, anything you can think of?
No, let's proceed.
All
Thank you,
right.
Ryan.
Yeah, no problem. Let me just explain for a minute how we're going to do this. Anyone in the audience can submit a question using the Q&A box you see at the bottom of your screen. Or if you want to ask your question verbally, you can select the raised hand icon at the bottom of your screen. What we'll do is we'll call on you, unmute you. You can unmute yourself and ask your question. If anybody is calling in by the phone, they can select #2 on their receiver. And what that will do, raise your hand in Zoom. We'll call on you using the last 4 digits of your phone number. And then we'll unmute you. You'll unmute yourself and you can ask your question. And we'll kind of go back and forth between the questions entered in the Q&A box and any raised hands that we have. Also, just to clarify, this is where you'll have an opportunity to ask a question. We're going to make those statements for the record on the application a little bit later on, and you'll have an opportunity to do that. So please save this time for questions that you might have. All right, and it looks like I already see them popping in.
Ryan,
So, yes?
one thing I wanted to say that Carrie Kent was a tremendous help to us, and thank you, Carrie. I have to admit that our process began probably close to 3 years ago. And I think when she took parental leave, she was smart. She may have known this was intensifying. I'm just kidding, but thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Ryan.
All right, thanks. So the first question here, are you going to make sure no rental activity? How are you going to make sure no rental activity will take place? Is that in the zoning description?
Steve, you want to handle that, please?
Yes, by internal rule right now, we have stated that renters may only use paddlecraft in the waterfront area. So there's a hard prohibition. We would incorporate that into the master deed and association bylaws that we are contemplating, and want to make sure that everybody knows that that's something we're very careful about. We want to make sure it's properly safeguarded, and that it is not a commercial marina in the typical sense of that term. Renters would only be able to use kayaks, paddle boards, and any other types of paddlecraft.
All right. Yeah, thanks for the question, answering it. Next question is, how many cabins are at Cedar Shores, and would each of the cabins own one of these slips? And 2, was any thought given to increasing the number of slips to a limited number instead of doubling the number?
Right now, the association has 9 residential and 3 non-residential units. So to be clear, it's 9 residential units that comprise the association. The second part of the question is, have we considered anything less than the full increase of 5? At this stage of the game, we think 5 is an appropriate number, and certainly look forward to getting that request granted.
All right, thank you. Next question. I think I can answer part of this. Are you going to go through comments already received? We are not. If the question is if we're going to go through those comments received tonight, we will not be doing that tonight on the line tonight for everyone's time. Maybe Joe, you can talk about or Carrie the comments that are already received and how those are handled.
Yeah, I can speak to that briefly. I think any comments received already would be treated as though they were public comments during this hearing. We would accept and review them as part of our process. So yeah, we would consider those and include them in our record.
All right.
The questions that we received during the public noticing period and requested that Cedar Shores answer, those have been posted on the My Enviro portal a little bit late. I do apologize for that. They were stuck in my inbox while I was gone. But there are answers to most of the questions that were brought up during the public notice that were relevant.
All right, thanks, Carrie. Next question, and I think this may have already been answered, but how many homeowners are in the association? Is that any different from what we've talked about already, or no?
Well, there's 9 residential, again, back to the number. There's 9 residential units. They're owned by 8 separate families or entities.
Okay, thanks. All right. Are any of the condos currently rentals? And if so, can the renters bring boats? I think you've already addressed this one as well, but if there's anything to elaborate on, feel free.
Paddlecraft only in the waterfront for renters. And within the association, we do have units that are rented.
Okay. That helps, thank you. All right, the next question is if there's someone asking if they can make a presentation. We're not having presentations tonight. This is only for comments for the audience. So if you have a comment tonight, you will have time to, in a manner of speaking, make a presentation, but we're not doing like a shared screen or camera or anything like that, just so you know. But you will have an opportunity to make a statement.
Is there a time limit, Ryan, excuse me, is there a time limit for each person's comment later on?
Yes, we'll go through that. It's going to be 3 minutes, but
Okay.
That's in the hearing statement and the hearings instructions that we're going to go through.
Thank you. Pardon me for the interruption.
Oh,
Thanks.
no, you're fine. All right.
How many people are there in attendance this evening? Can you say, please?
Yeah, right now we have 73 people, including presenters, so
Right.
including EGLE staff.
Well, thank you, everyone.
So the next question is, and I'm kind of going through these pretty quick because there's a lot of questions here. I want to get to as many as we can. The diagram states that riparian lot line is not established. The statement was made that the turn area was based on the riparian line. Was a survey done to establish the riparian line?
Short answer is we do have a survey, yes.
Ryan, can you go back to the diagram?
Yes, I can.
So that line that's shown at the bottom of the drawing is not the official riparian line. It's the extension of the property line on the land. Riparian lines can be different than the lot line. It's not always the projection of the lot line out into the water. I think, and Carrie, you may know better, and some of the locals may know better what happens with riparian lines in Torch Lake, but I think they're generally pretty straight in this area when they go out into the water. But no, we did not request a formal riparian interest area survey on this application because it didn't appear like it would be necessary. There's enough room there because of the nature of that southern slip, number one, that there's a lot of room to the southwest for somebody to just motor directly into that. So it meets that criteria likely, unless the riparian line would be skewed off quite more radically to the northwest. It should be okay.
Joe, I believe what we did, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we had our survey completed, and this was the surveyor that also completed the survey when the developer converted what was a family-owned resort to the Condominium Association in 1999. So we extended that property line out to an imaginary line on the water and used that as a basis. And obviously because of the north-northwest sloping of this property, the lines are not exactly perpendicular or 90-degree angle from the land.
All right, yeah, thanks. Thanks for all the info. It looks like we have a raised hand, so I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to Norm Neuenschwander. We're going to unmute you, and it looks like you're unmuted on our end, so you just have to unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question of the panel.
The property owners or the residents that are there, are they permanent residents and do they sublet their property? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Norm.
I'm going to try to answer the permanent part. They tend to be seasonal owners, so they're not there the entire year. Do they rent? Of the group, of the 8 owners, 3 do not rent and 5 do rent.
I should add those are sporadic rentals. They're not consistent weekend to weekend.
Yeah, if you looked at the overall year, you might say that it's a smaller portion of the year than, and the owners stay there sometime and rent sometime. So it's a mix as between the 2 of them.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Does that answer your question, Norm?
I think Norm.
All right.
Yeah, if that doesn't, Norm, feel free to raise your hand.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't answer your question. Next, we'll go to one more raised hand, and then we'll go back to the Q&A box. Dan Anderson, we're going to unmute you so that you can ask your question. You can unmute yourself, and then you can begin and ask your question when you're ready. Are you there, Dan? All right, looks like you're unmuted, so you may be having a microphone issue or need to switch microphones. So you might need to check that in your settings. But we can't hear you, so we're going to move on to the Q&A box. So if you have a question, you can type it in the Q&A box. Or if you think you've got your microphone fixed, feel free to raise your hand again. All right. All right. What is the radius of the co-owners from the dock entrance, and what percentage of these co-owners that have property directly on Torch Lake waterfront? I don't know. Does that make sense?
Douglas, I'll have you answer that. If you could clarify that question, that would be helpful.
I'm not sure I understand radius and how that, what's that equate to?
What is the radius of the co-owners from the dock entrance, and what percentage of the co-owners? I'm not sure either. If you have a clarification on that, whoever asked that question, please enter that.
The second part of that question, who's on the lakefront? As you can see here in the drawing, there are 2 units, one at 1 o'clock and one approximately at 3 o'clock, that are close to the water. The others are further back, stepped back, running in a line from west to east. Our property is a long rectangle running east and west. And so not everybody is, no one is considered lakefront because we are part of an association. Condominium, it's all common element property in the front area other than where their cabins sit. And so there are 2 that are close to the water and the others are set back.
Okay, thank you. Is dredging the lake bottom part of this proposal?
Negative.
All right, there was, let's see here. It sounds like non-residential was mentioned. What do you mean by non-residential?
There are various storage units. They include basically a storage garage, a storage shed, and two storage sheds.
All
They are
right,
not, there is no sewer or septic running into and out of it. There's no water running into and out of those units.
all right, thank you. What has been the response and or concerns of the immediate neighbors? The response, I'm assuming that's response to and of or concerns, or maybe, yeah. What is the question is, what has been the response and or concerns of the immediate neighbors? So it could also be, have the immediate neighbors expressed concerns?
None. I mean, we reached out and talked to representatives of Tivoli and talked to them about the project in sort of the midsummer time frame. They're directly south of us, and their response was, you know, they understood what we're trying to do and did not, as far as I know, express any major objection to the project itself.
Okay, thank you. Can you clarify again where the answers to the questions are posted? What is the website, or what website is that? I think maybe is this what Carrie had mentioned?
I believe so. So that would be through our My Enviro Site Explorer. If you are on this call tonight and have left your information, that link will be sent to you via email in the next few days, along with the recording, I believe.
Yep, we'll have that recording ready within that time. All right. What weight is public comment given in this decision? I don't know, Joe or Carrie, if you can talk about that at all.
I can. So the law requires the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality to allow public comment on some actions such as this proposal before us tonight. And so that's what this is, an opportunity to collect public comments. As far as weight goes, you know, we are really seeking this is not a democratic process where, you know, it's a vote of more people are for it or against it, and that makes a determination. Public comments are weighted on really, you know, what they involve. We seek your public and local comments because you live out here, you recreate out here, you folks probably know this water body better than we do. Carrie and I don't live here. We work out here, and we do know, you know, generally what goes on and know the shoreline and the water body, but you know the rhythms and what you see in the landscape, the wildlife, and such. So we certainly weight your comments considerably, but they need to be cogent and speak to the provisions that we're allowed to consider under Part 301. And I will describe those a bit when I get into the statement that opens the public hearing. But you know, they're weighted accordingly to their value. Really, if you're just commenting, I'm against it, we'll note that comment, but it doesn't carry a lot of weight. If you're commenting that, oh, I've seen sturgeon spawning out here, we may, you know, pressure Fisheries Division for some additional comments, or, you know, it could drive some additional information inquiry. But so just weighted accordingly to what they actually are.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. So there's some questions about the township. Did you do you need a permit or zoning variance from the township for this project?
Short answer, not for this.
Okay. Right, and we have a raised hand, so I'm going to go to that since we've been going through the Q&A box for a little bit. Mark Businski. Mark, you're unmuted on our end. You can unmute yourself by selecting the microphone icon and begin when you're ready.
Thank you. My question's been answered.
All right, thank you. All right, another raised hand, Paul Sack. Paul, we'll unmute you. And then you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, my question is, over the years, when new co-owners bought a new unit in, since 1999, that did not have a deeded slip, were they notified of this fact?
The answer is they knew that they didn't have a boat slip at the time they made that purchase. Those that did have deeded boat slips are those units which had, and I'll get a little bit technical at this point, those that had slips that ran with the residential unit were able to transfer those to new owners. So in other words, if there was a slip attached to that particular unit, then that could be transferred to the new buyer.
Our
Okay,
master deed stated that we were limited to 4 slips. That's what the plan allowed. And that was the master deed that's still in effect now.
Okay, can I ask another question?
Yeah, one more.
Okay, my question is, from looking at the layout and the Antrim County parcel information, I see that 3 of the co-owners, 2 of which are on the condo board, have bought acreage on the other side of Southeast Torch Lake Drive, just opposite the condo. I think roughly about 2.5 acres each. And I'm wondering what those 3 co-owners are going to be doing with this property that is vacant and sits just opposite the whole condo association.
Yeah, I happen to be one of those. At this point in time, we don't have any definite plans as to what we'll do with that acreage. I think at this stage of the game, we want to make sure that we have some of these issues worked out and resolved first before, deciding what to do later on with open acreage. It happened to come up. We did take advantage of that purchase, and that's as far as it goes for this at this point in time.
And if I may correct you, sir, that presently only one board member, Steve Took, owns one of those 3 parcels.
Yeah, I own one. I know Eric owns one, I believe. And so, I think it just arose. People took advantage of that prospect. But anything that relates to the waterfront is going to be subject to a review by, EGLE and other regulatory authorities.
All right. Well, thanks for the question and answering the question as well. Next question that I want to bring up: when is the vote on this request expected to be made? So I guess there isn't a vote. Maybe Joe, you can or Carrie, or if there's a timeline involved and what will go into the decision, that might help answer that question.
Yeah, it's not a vote, right? It's a departmental decision based on the information that we have in front of us and that we would have in our files and our with the backstop of the regulations. The decision would be made following this hearing and following receipt of public comments. The comment period closes 10 days after this hearing. Probably within 60 to 90 days.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Joe. We have time for just a few more questions. Then we're going to have to move on to the hearing part to make sure everybody has an opportunity to make a statement tonight. Does the plan adhere to local ordinances related to the number of slips per feet of shoreline?
Steve?
Ryan, would you repeat that just so I,
Yeah, does this plan adhere? I'm sorry, did you say repeat the question?
yeah, just repeat
Okay.
it. So
Yep, sorry. Does the plan adhere to the local ordinances related to the number of slips per feet of shoreline?
I'm not familiar with those ordinances, to be specific. I do note that we have 29.2. Were there to be 9 large boat slips, there would be 29.2 feet per large boat slip.
Okay.
Ryan, if I may comment.
Yep.
Over the course of the time that Carrie has bared with us during this process, I personally, as of a couple others of our residents, have communicated with the Helena Township, inquiring what ordinances are there, restrictions as to how many slips can we have per feet. At one time, they had regulated that. I believe about 2 years ago, they told us they were no longer regulating that. So at this time, to the best of our determination and understanding, there are no current in force ordinances regulating how many slips are allowable per feet. There's no equation. So that's our understanding at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, and this is going to have to be the last question before we move on. And I think I've seen it mentioned a couple times related to aesthetics. What are the riparian rights related to aesthetics? Does that mean view or access related to swimming, etc., or access for paddle boarding? Any thoughts?
So that's a question either for the local unit of government or EGLE. EGLE does not have a consideration for aesthetics here. That's not part of our review criteria for a Part 301.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Joe. I think that's helpful. All right. Well, thank you all for asking those questions. We were able to get to about 25 of those typed in along with the callers. So yeah, thanks for participating in that and for our panelists for taking the time to answer those questions. So we're going to move on to the next part of tonight's hearing. Before I do, in case you don't want to make a statement tonight, at the hearing, there's some other ways you can submit an official comment. You can do that through EGLE's MindViro application, which was, I think, mentioned before. You can see the link there, Submission HPV-P931-6KCC3, and we're going to put that link in the chat. Then you can also submit it by mail to EGLE Water Resources Division at the Gaylord District Office. That's at 2100 West M32 in Gaylord, Michigan. And the comment period after the public hearing will be open for 10 days. And so that'll be until February 10th. All right, so we're going to go through the instructions here and read the hearing statement. So Joe, I'd like to invite you to read the hearing statement and kick the hearing off.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Haas, District Supervisor for Water Resources Division for EGLE. I'll be the hearings officer for tonight's hearing. Also here tonight from EGLE is Carrie Kent, Ryan Blazik, Water Resources Division Liaison from Environmental Support Division. And we talked that Bill Obing, who is the district representative who's been assigned to this file, can't be here tonight. But we'll be sort of processing this application in our Gaylord field office as a group. It's not really a single person's decision. It's a departmental decision. The agenda tonight will function. I'll start with some background information about why we're here tonight, and then describe the purpose of the hearing and how your comments will be used. Following that, I'll briefly outline the procedures for taking public comments and describe what will happen after tonight's hearing. Once the formal part of the hearing is started, it's time for you to provide your comments on the record. The formal hearing itself does not allow for discussion or questions and answers. We'll spend most of the time listening to your comments, and at the end of the hearing, I'll read a very brief closing statement. By the way of background, the Water Resource Division is responsible for administering a variety of programs that help protect inland lakes and streams, wetlands, floodplains, sand dunes, Great Lakes, of course, and we have some other responsibilities as well. These programs regulate certain activities such as dredging or filling in a lake, stream, or wetland, constructing a dam, constructing a marina, placing shoreline protection or constructing permanent docks, building in a designated critical sand dune area, building in a wetland or floodplain. The law governing these responsibilities is the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, 1994, PA 451, as amended, also known as Act 451. We're here tonight because the Cedar Shores Resort Condominium Association has proposed to construct a marina consisting of 9 boat slips and 10 jet ski slips. The Cedar Shores Resort Condominium Association currently operates a 4-slip seasonal marina. The purpose of the hearing, the law requires Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy to allow public comment on some actions such as the proposal before us tonight. For our permit to be granted, EGLE must find that the proposed activities described in the public notice meet certain regulatory criteria set by Part 301 Inland Lakes and Streams Act of 451. In general, we must consider the effect of the proposed project on the inland lake. When reviewing an application for a permit under the provisions of Part 301, EGLE is charged to make the following considerations as required by Section 30106 of Part 301. 1, the department shall issue a permit if it finds the structure or project will not adversely affect the public trust or riparian rights. 2, the department shall consider possible effects of the project upon the inland lake and all connecting waters, and the uses of all these waters, including uses for recreation, fish and wildlife, aesthetics, local government, agriculture, commerce, and industry. The department shall not grant a permit if the proposed project or structure will unlawfully impair or destroy any of the waters or other natural resources of the state. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to give anyone interested in the Cedar Shores Resort Condominium Association's proposed marina an opportunity to provide information that EGLE can use in making the decision whether or not to issue a permit. Please recognize that EGLE can only use the information you provide if it relates to the criteria EGLE must use in making a decision. Some of you may simply want to express your support or opposition to the project. We're happy to make note of your position, but please understand EGLE is by law not allowed to base our decision on whether or not there's widespread support or opposition to the project. Public comments are a very important part of making sure the project has been thoroughly reviewed. Based on comments received during this public comment period and the comments received at this hearing, EGLE may permit the action as proposed, request the project proponent revise or modify the proposal, or deny the proposal. Before I outline procedures we'll use for taking your comments, I need to mention that the notice of this hearing was published in the Traverse City Record-Eagle on January 7th, 2024. As we discussed at the beginning of the informational session, if you have a comment to provide, raise your hand in the Zoom toolbar. To ensure that the hearing is conducted in a fair manner, we'll follow these steps. First, applicants have already had an opportunity to describe the proposed project. We'll then call on those who have indicated in their registration that they would like to speak. After that, Ryan will call on those that raised their hand in the Zoom toolbar and stated that they would like to make a comment if they haven't already been called upon. As a reminder, if you're participating in this hearing via telephone only, follow the directions of the moderator on how to identify that you would like to make a comment. You may also submit your comments to EGLE through the My Enviro portal, through email, or provide to us through US mail. When all the comments have been completed, we'll ask if anyone else would like to make a statement. When your name is called, your microphone will be unmuted. As you begin your comments, please state your name and any group or association you may represent. Each person will be given 3 minutes to make their comments. Ryan will indicate to you when you have a minute left. Please begin wrapping up your comments at the end of the allotted time, and if need be, we'll indicate when your time has ended. I ask that we all be courteous and respectful to one another tonight. Please recognize that EGLE staff are here tonight to provide a fair opportunity for you to express your comments on the proposed project and to hear those comments. This hearing is being recorded, and your comments will be a part of the information EGLE will consider in making its decision on whether to issue a permit on the proposed project. The public comment period for this proposal is open for 10 days from the date of this hearing and ends on February 10th, 2024. Comments and additional information can be submitted in writing during the 10-day comment period to be considered in EGLE's decision. Following the close of the public comment period, EGLE will decide to either issue a permit for the project as proposed or with modifications, or send a letter of denial. You may find out what the decision is by checking the My Enviro portal website and searching for the application number. That is HPV-P931-6KCC3. Thank you for your attention. We'll begin calling the names of those who have indicated they would like to make a statement. Take it away, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Just to reiterate a couple things for everyone, as Joe mentioned, we're going to start with the list of names of people who indicated during registration. I have a list of 5 names. Once we get through those names, we're going to go to the raised hand. So you can raise your hand and we'll call on you in turn and unmute you. You have your chance to make your comment. You have 3 minutes. Actually, we'll have a countdown timer, so you'll be able to see how much time you have left in the 3 minutes as it counts down. And then I'm going to give you a 1 minute heads up using a chime sound, which sounds like this. So you'll know you have a minute left. If you run out of time, I'm also going to show those other ways to submit an official comment after this slide. So you have an opportunity to submit any follow-up or supplemental comments at a later time. Please identify your name and any affiliation if you have one when you give your comment. Everyone will have an opportunity to make a comment, so we're going to be here until everybody has had a chance to make their comment. If you're called on and you have somebody else on the line that wants to make a comment, just let me know that when you're unmuted that you have somebody else there that would like to make a comment. It's going to be 1 comment per person to make it fair for everybody and make sure everyone has an equal opportunity. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And for those of you on the phone, you just need to select #2 to raise your hand in case you want to make a comment, and then we'll call on you using the last 4 digits of your phone number. So first up is Steve Kelly. So Steve, we are going to unmute you on our end. Then you can unmute yourself and make your statement when you're ready.
Thank you, Ryan, and appreciate everybody joining and for EGLE to host this this public hearing. I had a chance to speak with Joe back in December about this, and I also want to thank Joe for his time with me in that day. I am a resident of Milton Township. My wife and I live on Torch Lake, and I'm also a representative of the Torch Lake Protection Alliance, or we call ourselves TLPA. We are an organization that represents about 550 owners, individuals and families, as well as about 30 businesses in this greater area. Our mission really for TLPA is to preserve and protect the health and the beauty of Torch Lake. This is why we're here, right? We love this lake, and it's a natural resource that we want to preserve. Its watershed and the surrounding environment for generations to come. So I want to make sure that everyone kind of recognizes kind of what TLPA's mission is. We stand by our earlier submission back in August when we were able to submit some initial reaction to this proposal, that the size and the scope of the proposed marina would have an unprecedented setting and be unprecedented of itself, thereby potentially allowing other riparian owners and developers to leverage this marina and its size to become basically the next wave of a shoreline with high density of watercraft, thus changing the scenery of our lake, intrusion to the neighbors, and potential further detriment to the health of Torch Lake. This cannot be a way that a resource as precious as Torch Lake should be managed. I've got a few bullets that I want to go through that give some specifics, as Joe outlined. We all need to be conscious of sharing that would go into your decision making. The first would be, we feel that this is an undesirable aspect, and that this expansion is creating a setting up for what's called funneling. Approving a permit that would enable funneling here and at other locations on Torch Lake and elsewhere the chain of lakes is something that we believe the Michigan courts have denied repeatedly in the past. Secondly, we believe there are issues with the use of the proposed marina for commercial purposes. I did hear the owners indicate that they did not believe any commercial activity would be going on here, but we know that they rent, and we also know that this property is deeded as an R1 zoning area that we believe is a clear violation of that zoning requirement for use of commercial slips for waterfront. We completely empathize as well with the distress of the nearby landowners. We believe this marina would infringe on their rights as waterfront owners, would add noise, impact safety due to the increased density of those swimming, including children and moving watercraft. We also believe that this marina approach will impact the value of the immediate and nearby properties, thereby causing financial harm.
You're at time, so please wrap your comments up in the next few seconds.
All right. The last big bullet is we find it regrettable that the township here doesn't have a regulation. That question came in with regards to ordinance, whereas both Milton and Torch Lake townships would have ordinances that would only offer about half of the number of total slips that are being requested here. EGLE's mission includes the statement that says we want to protect the environment.
We're gonna have to move on to the next person.
Sorry, I was almost done.
It's all right. But you can provide supplemental comments if you need to afterwards. But thanks for your comment. All right. So next up is Richard Welsh. So Richard, we're going to find you in the audience and unmute you. I'm not seeing Richard.
I do not see Richard.
All right. So after Richard is Charles Garrett, and then after Charles is going to be Thomas Emling. So do we have Charles in the audience? Not seeing Charles either.
I don't see Charles.
Okay. All right. So we have Thomas Emling, and then after Thomas, it's going to be John Spevacek. So Thomas Emling. Not seeing Thomas.
Go. Good evening. This is Tom Emling.
Got it. Okay. You can start when you're ready, Tom.
Good. Thank you very much, Brian, and everyone. And thanks to everybody who's participating and part of the public hearing this evening. I'm Tom Emling. I am part of the Tivoli Cooperative right next door. We are the neighbors just to the south of Cedar Shores. And we have 8 cottages, and it's a cooperative. It's not a condominium. Our shoreline is approximately the same distance in the ballpark as Cedar Shores. We've had very nice and I think very positive relationships over the years with our neighbors next to the north. I have to say that the experience we have had, unfortunately, is, and the Torch Lake Protection Alliance, I think observation really calls into question the amount of traffic the 19 slips will invariably create. The traffic that we will see with the watercraft coming and going is just seems to be really out of scale. We currently have 3 boat slips, large boat slips, I guess would be the definition. And our cooperative and our members have really by choice decided, yes, the township does not have any limit on the number of slips, but we have decided, and we have, in terms of stewardship of the lake, have really said that's about all we need. We have 8 cottages, 8 cooperative members and so on. So we obviously could go to a much larger slip marina if we chose to, but we have chosen not to. The other experience, I think, in all fairness, that we have had over the years with our the children who swim next door to Cedar Shores, and just in general, and any number of occasions when the boats and the jet skis actually do racing in and out of the of their marina, really have caused us great concern about the safety of the swimmers, our swimmers and our folks who are using the water next door. So it's a concern.
Yeah, thanks for your comment. Next up is John Spevacek. There's John, looks like. Oops. All right, looks like you are unmuted on our end, John. You can begin your comment when you're ready.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So I'm John Spevacek. I'm the president of the Torch Elk Skigimog Alliance. We are another lake association mainly focused on responsible development of the 3 lakes that we're talking about here in our name. My comments are really largely the same. I think very similar to what Steve's comments were, the first speaker. We're concerned about the density of slips relative to the shoreline, and I live in Milton Township, so yeah, we do have a restriction there. This couldn't be constructed in Milton or Torch Lake. I don't know, not sure about Forest Home or Central Lake, but it's problematic that to me and to us that Helena does not have this requirement. I'm a little bit distressed that they had it and then apparently took it out. I know that they're reviewing their master plan now and updating that, so maybe they will think about putting this kind of restriction back in, but that will be probably after the fact here, if you'll get this in before that's done. So it's just our concern. I think that's the major concern that a lot of us have. It's just the density of boats along the shoreline. So thank you for your time. Thanks.
No, thanks for your comment, John. All right, so that is the last person on my list. So we're going to go in order of the raised hands. So if you have not made a comment yet and would like to make a comment, please select the raised hand icon in your Zoom toolbar. If you're on the phone, you can select #2, and that will also raise your hand in Zoom, and we'll call on you in turn using the last 4 digits of your phone number. All right, so first up of our raised hands, Timothy Nichols. We're going to unmute you, and then you can unmute yourself and begin your statement when you're ready.
Thank you, Ryan. My name is Tim Nichols, and my wife Wendy and I own a home on Torch Lake within a quarter mile or so of Cedar Shores. Cedar Shores has always been, as far as we've owned our home about 11 years. Cedar Shores has always been a good neighbor. But I too am concerned about the size and scope of this project. We do not own a boat. We utilize the lake for swimming and kayaking as do our 4 children and our grandchildren. And so we have a concern that doubling the size of the slips to 19 slips in a residential area like this would be a substantial safety concern to our children and our grandchildren. And so I was not aware that Helena Township did not have a zoning restriction governing the size of the number of slips. And it is, I think, relevant and instructive to me that other townships on the lake, including Milton and Torch Lake townships, do have restrictions on the number of slips. And I think that hopefully EGLE will take that into consideration. As a homeowner myself, I am very sensitive to governmental intrusion on plans. So I feel the concern that Cedar Shores may have with someone turning down their request. I would only suggest that EGLE has the right to perhaps suggest a revision or a modification. I was the person who asked the question about, is there a possibility of considering making the request somewhat smaller in terms of the number of slip requests that still could be shared with the homeowners of Cedar Shores, and so accomplish some of their goals and yet not be quite as extensive as this suggestion. So that would be my recommendation, to be kind of a compromise to allow Cedar Shores some relief here, but to keep into consideration the issues of noise and safety, particularly safety for my family anyway. So thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. All right, next up, Paul Sack. So Paul, we're going to unmute you. You can unmute yourself and begin your comment.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Paul Sack, I'm president of Friends of Clam Lake. Now, you may ask why Friends of Clam Lake is involved in a project on Torch, and the reality is this. Any project in Helena Township that touches Torch Lake, Clam Lake, or Thayer Lake affects us all, especially when we call it talks to funneling, keyhole development, commercialization of short-term rentals. And this application touches on all those. Just as a first point, in the summer of 2019, an applicant applied for marina on Clam Lake in an R1 residential zone. That's submission HNQ-6VGK-Y8932. He originally wanted dockage to go across the property parallel to the shoreline for about 300 feet. That was denied by EGLE, and the applicant was only allowed to build a dock for his own personal use, 1 slip. Per the current zoning ordinance, although, as has been pointed out, the township does not have one restricting the number of boats, it does have one that states that marinas are not allowed in R1 zones in Helena Township. So the question tonight is, why are we here tonight when a marina in R1 violates current zoning? Now, I've heard the argument of grandfathering. The reality is the original Cedar Shores Resort, the classic up north cabin retreats, went away in March of 1999 when the Condo Association was formed. The Condo Association cannot be grandfathered. In fact, the owner, we call in the Master Deed Section 7 restrictive covenants, stated that Condo Association is a non-conforming use and states that any changes, enlargements, etc., has to be approved by the Helena Township Board and Planning Commission. I have not seen any of that. My last point is short-term rentals. The applicant in its October 9th reply painted a picture that short-term rentals are a fraction of the quote unquote total days available in a calendar year. The reality is the rental period is Memorial Day to Labor Day. And if you go to Airbnb and check the availability calendars on those that are publicized there, you will see that the rental period is closer to 100%. And besides that, there's actually no restriction on the length of stay for these short-term rentals. If you look at the comment sections in the Airbnb, you'll see people commenting on how they were there for a few days. Well, here's the reality. The Helena Township zoning ordinance only allows zoning short-term rentals of at least 7 days, not a few days. So we ask that EGLE denies this application because it is in violation of the township ordinance and is a funneling disaster in the making. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for your comment, Paul. All right. Next up is Ken Masick. Ken, you can unmute yourself and begin when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Ken Mask, and I was the owner of Tivoli for 10 years. Worked closely with Cedar Shores. We both had what we were used to be termed mom and pop cottages on Torch Lake. We operated them side by side. There were only a few of these on Torch Lake, and we love the lake. And Tom Emmeling is one of the owners of the place when we turned it into a cooperative. And the cooperative, like Tom mentioned, put in specific rules. We stayed with the rules for a long, long time with one shore station per 50 foot of frontage. So, and Tivoli has still stayed with that, and that's the neighbors to this project now. The biggest concern I have in the whole thing is it's a high use area with swimmers, and whether people are renting or whether they're not renting. Now my family owns 3 of the cottages at Tivoli, so I'm very concerned with grandkids and kids playing and things like this. And the boat traffic coming in and out of shore stations is horrendous. You're talking platform boats that's all they bring on the lake nowadays are platform boats loaded with people. People have been using libation on the boats. They come in at high speeds. To park a boat on our shore in high wind is crucial. You can't even see the people in the lake, and we are in a high wind area. It's a real safety hazard to put this thing on the shore next to our other people's property. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment, Ken. All right, next up, Dan Packer. We are going to unmute you, and then you can unmute yourself and begin your comment. Are you there, Dan? I think we might have had you might have had an audio issue before when you asked a question. So you can continue to work on your audio settings potentially, or there is a call-in number as well that you should be able to access so that you can call in by phone to make your comment. Otherwise, you can, I'll also be showing the other ways to make it a comment so that you can make a comment one of those other ways. All right, so next up is Elizabeth Dole, and then Dan, if you get your audio fixed, feel free to raise your hand again. So Elizabeth, you can begin when you're ready.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. I am a part of a family that has owned property on Torch Lake in Helena Township, just north of Cedar Shores. We've owned the property for 70 years and been very privileged and blessed to be able to spend summers on Torch Lake. We consider it our home, our permanent home, although it is not permanent home as far as the tax of Michigan, the taxing of Michigan property is concerned. But it is our spiritual home. There have been a lot of changes on Torch Lake in the past 70 years, and it seems to me there's an exponential change going on right now, with huge houses being built, huge boats being run, and more people on what my mother called party boats, pontoon boats. I agree with the people who are concerned about children. I've seen renters in particular who do not understand Torch Lake and the winds and the squalls that can come up suddenly. They don't understand the danger of taking a child out on a kayak and perhaps even kayaking ignorantly into that 45-foot area to the south of the marina, which is supposed to be the turnaround area. There is danger that's happening here, as well as, I believe, precedent setting. I would not want to see more marinas, private marinas, or more usage of docking of these large, powerful boats on the shoreline. So I would caution EGLE to consider the total picture, not simply of what the neighbor to the south have to say about this, but also the neighbors to the north. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. All right, I think that's my last raised hand right now anyway. If anybody else is on the line who would like to make a comment, you can select the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen. We'll call on you next. Or you can select #2 if you're calling in by phone, and then it'll raise your hand in Zoom. If there are no other commenters tonight, what we'll do is move on to the next part of the evening and go through the other ways to make a comment again, and who to contact for questions. All right, I've got a raised hand. All right, Karen, we're going to unmute you. Have you gone yet, Karen?
I have not. Hello, how are you?
Good, good. Yeah, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. I'm Karen Gallagher. I am a resident of Cedar Shores, actually, and I've been there for 4 years. So I wanted to make a comment to my colleagues, Douglas and Steve. One of the things that we didn't post was an actual drawing of what we have today without the marina being there. And I don't know, Ryan, can you pull that up, that slide again? Because I wanted to.
I have to keep it on this slide for the hearing to make it fair for everybody.
Yes. Unfortunately, we didn't think of this earlier, but we need to show that the marina, the way it's described right now, is not anything like what we have currently. So what we have currently, and you may recall that there was a deck that was in place. Our current marina is actually to the south of that deck. So we have 263 feet of frontage. We currently have about 140 feet, give or take, because I haven't measured exactly. Douglas and I were talking the other day. I think it's about 140 feet of lake frontage that the residents of Cedar Shores use, and our guests and families and so on. If this marina goes into play and it's at its full size, what you will see, and you talked about, I think it was you, Joe, that mentioned that there's a dock that comes off at that end thing. That is what we call the swim dock. Where that is now is in the white part of that drawing, and that is quote our beach area is the white part. And that is center right in the middle of what would be the marina in the future. So what happens now, if we get the full marina, is that all of that swim dock where it is now is pushed all the way, quite a bit north. And what that means then is that our swim area that's accessible to and for recreation use is completely reduced to about 35 to 40 feet from about 140 feet. So what we have currently is that swim dock coming off the beach with swim access for all of our guests and our families, whatever, to the left or to the south. And also swim area access, which also includes, we have a launch area, a tiny little curvy launch area where you can launch your kayaks or paddle boards, and there's a waiting area for children there. That whole area would be covered by marina now and not accessible. So what happens is the whole swim area moves north. We have only 40 feet left, and it impairs the ability for our kayakers to load and unload and then furthermore, and this is a question for you guys, because I'm not sure of the laws on this, but we have made a seawall, et cetera, made it correct and everything. If we have all marina there and we need a swim area to the north, we would have to build a whole new swim area and a whole new wading area.
Yep. And you're at time, Karen. So can you wrap your comments up, please?
Yeah, so thank you. So my comment is that I'm a board member, but I personally disagree and reject this offer or this request and application. I personally think it will impair all of our actual recreation and safety of our swimmers, and would push it into a much smaller area that, in my opinion, would not be safe and would be way too close to the boating activity.
Thanks for your comment, Karen. We're going to have to move on to the next person. All right. All right, next up, I have another raised hand, Jim Schofield. Jim, we are going to unmute you. And then you can unmute yourself and begin when you're ready.
Okay, got it handled. Okay, Jim Schofield. We're at the south end. Been there since 1974 when I met my wife, and we're in front of the Sandsucker Holes. If you know where that is, on the south end of Torch Lake. If you don't, anyway, these marina type things, all that's going to do for my opinion, is to bring more people down by the sandbar. Get so many people on that sandbar that I can't even take my boat out. I need a little bit of depth. So I got to go in the northwest direction by the sandbar, and there's so many boats out there, I can't even get by. So we just take one of the kayaks or my aluminum boat. But I can appreciate people wanting to come to our beautiful lake, Torch Lake. But if it gets to another marina type thing, we have several wonderful marinas around the lake as it is. And of course, I have a boat hoist, and I enjoy it. But we need to recognize that the lake will only handle so many boats and activities, especially down at the sandbar. If they would all go north, that would be fine. But it doesn't happen, but we're still want to have that availability for all our people to enjoy such a beautiful lake, but we have to kind of use some discretion. And I thank you for your service, and this meeting was wonderful, and I appreciate all who called in, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Jim. All right, so Chris Grobel, looks like your hand's raised. We're going to unmute you, and then you'll be able to unmute yourself and can begin.
Yes, thank you. Yep, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, there might be a little delay here, so I'm joining late, but pleased to be able to make a comment. You got my letter January 27, which is written on behalf of riparians, and I've raised issues related to Part 301 Inland Lakes and Streams Act, as well as the context and the setting of this application. So I guess the things I'd like to highlight are that, first of all, this is a marina, I don't know, it looks like a commercial use, potentially a commercial use in a district that's not allowed in local zoning for that kind of use. And this should be otherwise lawful. That's probably not allowed. But more importantly, looking at, the riparian rights and 301 standards, I have very deep concerns about the fact that there was not information provided about the environmental impacts, the impacts on nearby riparians, a good, clear definition of the riparian interest area in this proposal, and then also, potential impacts on public navigation. Torch Lake is a jewel, it's a gem, it's one of the best lakes we have in the whole world, whole country. And this kind of thing at the near shore is really to be carefully considered. The target depth for navigation, I'm sorry, the target depth for wharfage and navigation in the projects I worked on is 3 feet, not 4.5 feet. There was no bathymetry. There were no data provided in terms of sediment types or any levels of nutrients in the sediments, anything like that. So it seemed to me kind of early on to be having this discussion without that kind of data. And I want to make sure that the department hears that comment and makes sure that this kind of thing is considered. But we don't know, in terms of dockage backing up the riparian. I'm sorry, was that a bell for me?
That's sorry. If you missed it earlier, that's a 1 minute left, Bill.
Hello?
And the countdown timer will tell you how much you have left. Are you there, Chris?
Okay. Yep.
So about
No
30
prudent and
seconds.
feasible alternatives were provided. The application, as you can see, there are only 2 waterfront properties in this site condo, and that doesn't mean you can allow for funneling in for all the other 10, let alone somebody parking in the parking lot, which has 10 parking spaces, and all that stuff needs to be considered. My letter, I think, very clearly speaks to all these issues, and thank you in advance for a considerate review of those questions and comments.
Yeah, thanks for your comments. All right, next up, Dan Packer, we're going to try this again. We'll unmute you, and then you can unmute yourself. Are you there? Are you there, Dan? Yeah, I'm afraid we're still not hearing you. I will show the other ways to make a comment here so that you can make a comment by mail or through my Enviro. I'll also be providing Joe's contact information in case you have questions or need to contact him. Anyone else need to make a comment tonight who has not yet made a comment? All right, raised hand. Naringa, we're going to unmute you, and then you can unmute yourself, and you can begin your comment when you're ready.
Thank you for this event. We really appreciate everybody's time to be able to look into this particular request. Just a quick little clarification. I'm not sure if this was clarified that 19 boats is not what's being requested. And I think actually the original intent may not have been more than 10 slots. So something to be considered. I don't think granting 19 small boats is fair based on all the safety concerns and everything else mentioned here. But on the other hand, more than what's currently existing is what's being requested. And I don't think it goes even in the north of 10 boats. So just to clarify, asking EGLE to consider not 19 boat slips or small boat slips, but a lower number, which does not impact the environment and the safety of those operating on the lake. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. All right, Dan Sujkowski, we're going to unmute you, and then I can begin your comment when you're ready.
Yeah, it's actually Sajowski. Sorry for the long, lengthy, difficult last name there. I just wanted to be quick with this, but I think the point that's showing up in a lot of the comments, including the written comments, is that this expansion is just too big. And, that sounds very subjective, but if you look at ordinances, and I've done this with other townships on Torch, Milton and Torch Lake Township, which was already mentioned. And this is in the written comments too. Specific ordinances limit the number of watercraft slips, combined boats and jet skis. And Milton actually has a formula for that. They limit those, the number of slips counted in that way, as well as Torch Lake Township too. They explicitly state that in their ordinances. And if you applied those ordinances to this expansion would be, by their counts, roughly double of what those others allow for, even allowing for the 260 feet of lake frontage. So if you grant this permit, for some reason, you'd be saying the other townships looked at and took into consideration lake frontage of the same length and said that it was appropriate to do something like half of what you've just would be permitting. And they've undoubtedly considered safety, environmental impact on neighbors and so forth. So for some reason, if you approve the permit as stated, you'd be saying, you know what? It's fair game to double it everywhere else because we think this is fair game here. So I just ask that you take that into consideration when you think about the size and scope of what's being proposed here and what it could mean for the rest of the lake. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. All right. Anybody else who would like to make a comment? Again, you can select the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen, or if you're calling in by phone, selecting #2. And as I mentioned before, if we don't have any other raised hands, we will go to the other ways to submit a comment and then provide contact information for questions. All right. So I'm not seeing any other raised hands right now. So we're going to go ahead and close out this part of the hearing and move on. So Joe, would you like to read the closing statement for us tonight?
Yes, thank you, Ryan. And thank everyone for your comments and cooperation. We appreciate your interest in this proposed project and that you took the time to be here tonight. As indicated at the beginning of the hearing, you may submit additional written comments until February 10th, 2024. Following the close of the public comment period, we'll consider all comments received and make a decision on the proposed project. Just to remind those that still want to make a comment, you can submit comments through the My Enviro portal, through an email to Carrie, myself, or Bill, or through the U.S. mail to the Gaylord field office. Again, thank everyone here for taking the time to participate and being actively involved. It's important for EGLE to have public participation, particularly when it comes to making sound decisions and protecting our shared natural resources. Your comments are important, and they help us make sure our review of the project is thoroughly and accurately reviewed. Thanks again. We appreciate you've shown an interest in taking the time to be here. The hearing is now closed.
Yep, thank you, Joe. As Joe mentioned, I'm going to read off some of these other ways again for the people on the phone. So it's a submission number in my Enviro HPV-P931-6KCC3, or by mail to EGLE Water Resources Division, Gaylord District Office, 2100 West M32 in Gaylord, Michigan. And the zip code is 49735. So I'm sorry, it's not up there. The comment period after this public hearing will be open for 10 days, so it will end on February 10th. If you have additional questions, you can contact Bill Oming. And again, Bill isn't here tonight, but you can contact Bill at 989-619-8509. Or by email at omingw@michigan.gov. That's OEMINGW@MICHIGAN.gov, or Joe Haas, the WRD Gaylord District Supervisor, at 989-330-9252. That's 989-330-9252, or at haasj1@michigan.gov. And that's HAASJ1@MICHIGAN.gov. So that almost wraps up the hearing tonight. Joe, do you have any closing comments for us?
No, I think I've covered it. Ryan, I don't know, maybe Carrie has something to say. I'm all set.
Okay. All right, thanks. Anything, Carrie, or should we close out?
Nope, I'm all set as well.
All right, perfect. Last thing that I have is another thank you for being part of this process. We will be sharing a closed caption recording of the hearing on our YouTube channel in a couple days. It sounds like Carrie will be following up with an email that will include that recording. So look out for that. And thank you very much for being part of this process. And hope you all have a great rest of your night.